All right, everyone, we are here with a very special guest. We have Hozier back in our studio. How'd I do?
Yeah.
Good?
Yeah.
All right,
so, yeah.
okay. You know, I feel like probably every interview you do, it's either, hey, say your name for us, or like you got that totally right or totally wrong.
Oh, you nailed it.
Perfect.
Yeah, we did have a little bit of a debate before you came in.
Yes.
Okay.
And you know what? I think, you came on our show years ago.
Yes.
It was at the Sirius Studios. And if I recall correctly, I think we had the same conversation where we may have said it wrong at the beginning and then
Totally, okay.
was corrected.
Totally. I think you nailed it. I always say cozier with, it rhymes with cozier,
That's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
That's a great way to do it. Well, thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you.
We're
Yeah,
very
good to see you again.
We're very excited to
Good
have
for
you.
years.
It's been a long time.
It has been a long
We've all lived a
time.
lot of life. You guys.
Yes.
More music.
We figured you wouldn't remember us. I think you're pretending to remember us.
No, I do. It was the off. What was the name of
We
the
were at the Sirius Studios,
the Sirius
and
office.
but that's I'm sure you had to do.
Oh, that's the picture of us.
to
Oh,
do
that's
a 9
frightening.
million.
Oh wow, yeah.
Look at all of our hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check us out.
Yeah.
Well, we've grown up,
Yes, exactly.
Look at
We
us now.
certainly
Third
are.
album.
We're
Still doing
Yeah.
podcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we've done over 300 episodes.
Yeah.
500, 600 almost now.
Congrats. Congratulations.
Yeah, that's a lot of episodes.
That's amazing.
That's kind of crazy. But you're here in New York. Your new album is out now, and everybody's listening. You can listen to Unreal on Earth. How long have you been working on this?
Yeah, I think some of the first songs I wrote in 2020, early 2020. I sort of put some other ideas aside and sort of kicked into this. But I think November 2021, so end of 21, was when you could sort of reapply for visas for the States. A lot of producers I wanted to work with were based here. So it was really 22 was an intense sort of studio time where I hit the ground running and a lot of the recording happened then,
And when you finish a song that you absolutely love and it's going to be on your next album, what is that feeling like when you kind of want the world to hear it, you want to put your music out there and you have to hold on to it?
Yeah, there's definitely it's a release, you're releasing the music in a sort of commercial sense, but there is something of a release where you let go of it, and you have to. Yeah, that can be you're emptying your pockets of it. You're just letting it sort of fly out in the world, and either way, when it's out there, then it's not just yours anymore. It's kind of you're hoping that people let it into their own homes and their own hearts and minds, So, you kind of just like watching your kids go off to college. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All grown up.
All grown up.
Yeah,
exactly.
here, fly away. I read that you recorded mostly in LA, right?
Yeah.
So, and you were kind of hopping around from spot to spot. Do you have a permanent spot in LA, or you were just couch surfing?
I was kind of just surfing. Yeah, I was. What was fun about it was I could live month to month in a different neighborhood. So for if I do put a route down there, I have a better sense of the city and different neighborhoods. But I mean, everywhere's changing so much. Every city is changing so much. Even from the first time I went to LA to last year, same as New York. The Lower East Side has changed so much. That was the first place I ever landed in New York. The first show we did. But but some of it was done in County Wicklow, where I'm from. I kind of recorded some of the stuff back home, and then brought those demos over to
What
LA.
was your favorite neighborhood that you were in LA?
I have really good memories of. It was kind of silly living, like Abbot Kinney was you know what I mean. But it it was really, really fun and really nice. I had friends nearby, and then they all have different paces. They've all very different paces. I live in the countryside, so anywhere where I could walk out of my place in LA, and it's hard to find places where you can walk in a neighborhood
anywhere,
and get a cup of coffee, So I found that in kind of West Hollywood. I found that in Silver Lake, and a little bit in Abbot Kinney as well.
Yeah.
So
you were really all over the place.
I was. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Do you spend more time in the States or back home?
It depends on the year. It depends on a tour cycle. I'll spend most of my time this year, I think, in the States, sometime in Europe. Last year I spent at least 6-7 months of the year in the States.
Do you have a favorite state?
I don't know. I think culturally
Don't worry, nobody will get mad.
Culturally I felt very aligned with the East Coast, and with New York. I found it very I didn't find it hard to settle in here. And so I'm more aligned culturally, and it took me longer to make sense of the culture of the West Coast, if that makes sense.
No, I definitely think that makes a lot of sense. And so you said you started really kind of working on stuff early 2020. What you started on, did that take on a totally different life, kind of going through the pandemic? Like, how did that affect what you were writing?
Yeah, I definitely, writing for me in the first two albums was always like something I do in solitude. I'd kind of wait until I could be completely alone, have time to myself. I'd get a lot of work done between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. So yeah, kind of vampire hours.
Yeah.
And be very covetous of like just alone time and just being left alone. But what I found then in the pandemic is actually for the first time finding the upper limits of what that can give me, finding the limitations of solitude, and with regards like it being something that is offers you more than it takes away. And so I sort of came down the other side of that, and was after finding its limitations, I was really charged with this new energy to like in working with other people. So when I got to LA, like jamming ideas around, kicking ideas around in a space with other minds and other creative outlooks and abilities, musical abilities, that was like super fun. So
was it almost like you were like, okay, I've had enough time alone, it feels good, but I'm ready to get these ideas to other people? I
think so. Yeah, it was I'd emptied my pockets, and I was like okay, so what else? So I could produce the work, with guys, but then also to just start from scratch. I'd enter into a space with like some of the producers and just start jamming music and make music in a way that I hadn't jammed since I was like 15, like just making noise with people. Yeah. And after coming away from a lockdown where being in a room with people seemed exotic, that was great.
Yeah, and I'm sure you just wanted to know, like, I've been working on these songs by myself. Other people have heard them, but I haven't been able to see that actual physical reaction. So it's like, is this good? Like, what am I working on?
Right. How do you know if something really hits you? Like you're saying, you're just making music, you're jamming. How do you know when you're like, all right, we've got it?
I think it happens early there's two. There's one that happens early in the conception of an idea when it's still kind of in an embryonic state, and it's like something is rising up in you. It's like you kind of put your ear to some abandoned well, and then you're like, oh no, there's something there. You kind of are charmed by this thing that feels incredibly authentic, or feels true to some theme or true to some part of yourself. And that in the conception of writing, you're like, okay, this is special. I need to cultivate this. I need to treat this idea with care and execute it as best I can. And then there is the ending of it when you're producing it, where you're adding the bells and whistles, and that's delicate too, because you're like, you want to make sure you don't want to gild the lily. You know what I mean? You don't want to add too many bells and whistles, and put on all of these branches and all of these limbs onto what is the core idea that you wanted to capture in the beginning. So there's these two kind of moments, but knowing when it's finished is kind of really hard, because that is tough, and that's a matter of many opinions, and it's also the deadline kind of helps out. Yeah.
I was going to ask if you are somebody who goes back to a song that you feel is finished over and over again, and how do you know, like, all right, I have to stop going back to this, it's done?
Totally. Yeah, that's hard, because I definitely do, and there is some songs, and it's never a good feeling that when you're laboring over what is those last decisions that you want to make. And they might be nothing, there might be a word, but for you, it means everything. And like, there's a lot, you change one word in a sentence and it can mean something very, very different, or it can be interpreted very, very differently. So those ones, kill me. And there was a number of those on this album, but it's like, how do you want to stop coming back? Sometimes it's also just nice to say it's not going to happen. And like, if you have to keep coming back to an idea because it doesn't feel ready, there's a great freedom in saying, you know what, it's not ready to be born. It's not ready to come. So, I'll come back to it at some other date, or some part of it will find its way to something else, you know.
You have 16 songs on this album. What do you find is like the perfect number? Because I've seen just the chatter from a lot of music fans these days is that we're not getting like full albums. Maybe they're short, they're either really short or really long, but like, would you find like that 16 is like a good sweet spot?
It felt good on this one.
Yeah.
It felt right. It was nearly a 17 song album.
Yeah.
You know, I think we recorded 26, 27 songs, you know, so that are ready and mixed.
Yeah.
So, and I really, it sucks because it's like, I want to share those, you know what I mean? And they're parts of me that I really want to get out there and that I'm proud of. And so yeah, 16 felt right. I think it's hard to know when you're sort of expecting too much from people to sit. Many of us don't have 60 to 70 minutes for like 80 minutes to sit down and listen to something front to back. So I'm also like, I'm aware that the trick was, I suppose the challenge was like getting something that feels like an album with a capital A, but then also these songs can stand on their own 2 feet away from that space, and the majority of people will just they might hear 1 or 2 or 3, you know. Like I don't think the majority of people have the ability to sit down for 62 minutes and give something their undivided attention,
start to finish, especially.
Yeah.
Like maybe they'll come back to it and finish the whole thing. But
I struggle to do that with films. I struggle to do that, you know. And
attention spans have shortened.
Attention spans and our attention spans, and then our workload and our, you know what I mean, that has increased.
So you pulled a lot of inspiration from Dantes Inferno for this album. Explain to everyone really what that kind of means and where that even came from, because it obviously, from just the immediate reaction, feels dark.
Yeah. And there's also, it could be, and there's also something, there's also the idea of just passing through something, coming through something, and making sense of what you've been through, and what you've gained in that time. And I think there's a part of me that's like super allergic to writing songs that are about a lockdown experience or a pandemic experience. Here we are, like we all had our time with it. We had our time in it, and the time made its way into us in a way that's just like, okay,
people want to forget it.
You know what, let it, people process it in their own time. So there's maybe one lyric on the whole album that reflects in any way on that experience, but like one line from one song. But I think it still seems silly to not acknowledge the fact that I certainly went into these circumstances, and I think we collectively as a society, depending on where you were in the world and what the rules were, what the consensus was of where you were, but we all found ourselves in this place where the context for the way that we lived changed, circumstances changed. We were at risk of losing a lot of things. People lost loved ones, people lost their jobs, people lost a great deal. Relationships changed. There was this enormous shift in the way that we contextualized our lives, understood the simplest of things like social interactions, physical contact. So there's this great sense of change, of us sort of passing through something and then coming out the other side. And so it felt dishonest, or it felt silly not to acknowledge at least the existence or the actuality of that. And so using that poem, and that poem is written by a dude from Florence, this poet centuries and centuries ago. It's a really, really significant piece of like Italian literature. But it's this kind of vision quest that this guy ends up in hell, you know, and falls off the path a little bit, or finds his way into these circumstances, ends up in hell and has to walk through it and comes out the other side. And so I just used that structure. So, and he structures hell in his imaginings, in his writings, as having 9 circles. He starts at one circle and he winds his way down and then comes out the other side of the world. So I just shaped the album into 9 themes, which are named after the circles that he sort of imagines. And then there's a descent at the beginning of the album, and there's an ascent at the beginning of the album. or at the end of the album, there's like a returning or an ascent, seeing the sky for the first time in a long time. And that's the kind of rough structure. So in no way is it a book report or you need to know about this poem, you know. It was just to structure the album in a way that was like, okay, coming into something and out the other side, as if to just nod to the fact that that's something we all did in the last few years.
And it makes so much sense.
And although it's like, you know, you hear hell and you're like, that's dark, but that's a comparison that many people can relate to, of going through a really dark time and coming out the other side.
Any
of
kind
it.
of challenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
And it's like, I think it's fun to play with these stories and play like why that poem is so significant. It actually still to this day is like became the foundational text. It's a foundational sort of imagery of how we all collectively imagine what hell is.
Right.
And I think part of playing with myths like this and playing with stories like this is like we need to I think it's good, especially now. It's crazy like the way things are kind of going in the last couple of years. It's good to remind ourselves that hell is not a real place. You know what I mean? But what we mean by when we go through hell, or I think individually, if you live long enough in this world, you'll walk through your own little hell realm and you'll come out the other side, you know, and you'll take stock of what it is. And I think it
is an expression people use all the time. Like, I went through hell and back.
Yeah, totally. So it's just playing with that. Right. You know what I mean?
Now, from when you started making music and to now, do you feel a different pressure with the way social media has changed and with the way people have been told to make music to cater to people on social media?
I found it a challenge at first. In the pandemic, I found it a challenge to be musician or songwriter or performer and then become cameraman, lighting man, editor.
Right.
You know, especially on an app that the interface of which is this size, and you make a slip and you lose 20 minutes of editing time. You know what I mean? It's, you know, a good decent TikTok takes hours. So I have to hand that respect to those who have
it seems really easy until you start to do it yourself and you're like, okay, this is not as easy as it seems.
Totally. Yeah. So there is a challenge in there's parts of me that was adverse to, but I have to say what's really nice to experience is, like, in the case of some songs on this record, there's a song called Unknown in particular. I just uploaded a video of me playing a sort of demo version of that song, and to have direct access to people saying, hey, this is cool, to skip the studio, to skip the campaign thing and just say, hey, here's a rough idea, like, here's my sketch. And people are like, that's cool, see that through. And to get that immediate access to that response is really, really nice. There's something special about
that.
the
feedback right away.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that is really nice. And now you're going to be able to see all your fans on tour. When was the last time you had a full tour?
Full tour ended December 2019. Okay. So I can't believe it's 2023.
Yeah.
But
almost a full 4 years.
4 years. I have been touring since March of this year. Yeah. So we did a club run, you know, in the States, and we did a kind of a club run in the EU recently, in Europe recently. I don't know where I am.
Yeah.
So we just last time I was in New York, we were playing the Barry Ballroom, and so we've done a few shows, a couple of shows back in Europe, and but we're gearing up to a larger production, larger venues right now, and it's
a lot of sold out shows in the US, which is really, really exciting. I mean, you're going to be at Madison Square Garden, which is huge. What is that? How does that feel for you?
It's cool. I mean, it's an iconic place, and I think when you're starting out, there is a part of you that doesn't dare to say to yourself, oh yeah, one day I'm going to be doing Madison Square Garden, you know, or the Hollywood Bowl. You know, so when it's upon you, it's been a nice surprise. It was a really, really sweet surprise that sold out very quickly. I think the day the tickets went up, it was gone very fast. That's just super encouraging. I think to be 10 years now, nearly releasing music, and it's just that it's still growing and people are still coming to the music, and it's getting bigger every time. That's really encouraging.
Yeah.
What's your reaction like when you sell out MSG? You know, you're a soft-spoken guy. Is it a yell? Is it a that's cool?
Yeah.
Just a couple pints, of maybe a fist pump in the air.
Yeah. I'd love to. Yeah. I don't know. I can't remember. I was like, it was. Yeah. I was gonna joke like, yeah. The false humbleness is gone once the cameras stop rolling. I was absolutely. I did 7 lines of cocaine. Wrapped my car around a fucking lamppost.
We figured that's who you are as a person.
Exactly. You know, I was in the news again.
Yes, that would be our guest.
Back in court.
Yeah.
And no,
classic you.
Yeah. I think it was a quiet. Look, it was quiet. I have a reluctance to be all too proud. I think it's like it is just okay. That's good. Okay.
Casual. That's
nice. It was good. Yeah, I was
good for me.
I was proud. Yeah, I was happy. I was proud. I did allow myself a moment of happiness.
Yes, as you should.
Yeah.
What are your favorite and least favorite parts of being on the road?
My God. The least favorite is definitely missing home, right? Missing the community that I'm part of over there. My friends who I've known since like high school, my high school buddies. You know, in the pandemic in particular, I plugged myself into that community, and I got to watch some of my best buds have their first kids and stuff. You know, and I'm godfather to a child now, and it's like there's a part of me that feels like I'm missing a great deal of like these significant moments in the lives of people I love, and that's tough. So the tiredness, you get used to being tired, you get used to being sleepless. Like, you know, it's like anything. It's like working in New York. Right. I think. But I think but then the best parts are it's incredibly rewarding, you know. It's to watch your life's work kind of come to fruition and get to sort of sit at the sharp edge of its impact, with people who are showing up every day to be in it, to watch it happen. That's really, really rewarding. And there's also something you kind of have, that you live in this perpetual sort of childishness of not being grounded. I don't have to think about the little things. Does my house need painting right now? Do I gotta rearrange? Do I gotta clean my kitchen? You know what I mean? You sort of take a step away from adult life, and you're in a different place every day. That you kind of just float through the world in a very playful way, and there's something fun about that too. You know?
This is a silly question, but you mentioned, missing some of your friends' big life moments. Mm-hmm. Do you have to RSVP to things, when you're a big artist like yourself?
I
or do they just expect, they can call you and go, you coming to this or no?
Yes, I do have to, but I have to be reminded too many times, and just like, that is one of my awful traits is I'm very bad at getting back to
right.
Yeah,
I am too. RSVPing.
Well,
you're like, you got to email or send the thing back.
Yeah, especially if it's like a year away, or it's like
weddings and whatnot.
No, if I exist then.
It comes back with the little envelope to send back. You're like, I got to do the mail thing.
Yeah. Exactly.
I would assume like your closest friends from home, of course, have known you the longest and know you the best. How do they make sense of the kind of musical star that you are? Like, is that when people get to poke fun?
They do.
Because I feel like Irish humor is a lot of making fun of everybody.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like you that's a rite of passage, and you're not really. There's a real cultural like aversion to somebody being all too proud of themselves. You know what I mean? There's a kind of a there's a great. And look, I think there's wisdom in undermining things that people are, collectively think that should be revered, right? Yeah. And I think Irish people are great at undermining things and sort of making fun of stuff, including celebrities. But I will say, like my buddies, for sure, they will, Yeah, we have a WhatsApp group, and it's like, it's like schoolboys, like, but it's
You know they're proud of you if they're making fun of you.
yeah, 100%.
And if they weren't, you'd be like, there's something wrong.
yeah, like that, like they'll just make up news headlines, and they're like similar to what I'd said a moment ago, and
Right.
I'll get a good laugh out of it.
Photoshop, send them to you. We saw this today.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, can't believe you got caught doing this again.
You're out of control.
So you also just had a new video come out, and now once again I'm back in the position of probably mispronouncing somebody's name, but Domino, right? No, close.
It was close.
Terrible.
I was wondering where you go. Donal. So in Gaelic,
wow, that is just nowhere close to what I thought that would be. Gleason, I can get at least.
Absolutely, yeah. It is tough with Gaelic names. The MH softens it so the M disappears.
Okay.
But so Donal.
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 Learn something new every day.
Yeah.
He's fantastic.
Yeah, no,
and
he is great.
yeah.
He is great. It was a valiant effort, though. I'm
gonna try. I was like, I could just ask you to say who's in the video,
100%.
but I was like, I'll at least try.
No,
Everyone's very proud of you.
Talk about. He's also, he's a Harry Potter guy. He's in those movies.
He is a Harry Potter guy, right?
Yeah.
No, there was a part of me that was excited. I was like, oh, let's do it. That's all right, because I know, those names are super hard. But Donal Gleason. He is. He's amazing. I've been a fan of his for years. Ever since I was a teenager. He used to be part of this kind of comedy sketch show back in Ireland, and I've been familiar with him for a long time, and I've always admired. He's incredibly funny. He has this very, very natural humor about him. He is sharp as a scalpel, and he's incredibly quick. And then he just every time I see him perform in something, he just pulls another color out of himself, another string that. But yeah, so I was the fact that he was up for it.
Yeah.
And also conceptually, he was a big part of its conception, of the actual idea of what this music video was going to be. The idea itself of like, he was kind of like, what about a dude in a field with a shovel, and he's just bringing it everywhere, and we were trying to figure out what's going on. So he was elemental in every part of this video, and then he gave so much of himself for 3 days, just like in the freezing cold, in the water, in the dirt. He just gave all of himself to this video, and so there's the fan in me that's just dorking out that I
right.
working with Donal Gleason, and then there's the kind of artist in me that just admires him as an artist. He's an incredible actor, and
it's incredible to see that kind of collaboration happen too, because when the big movie stars don't often appear in music videos, so when you it's very, very
He's cool. Yeah. And I got to say, Wolf James directed it, directed by the name of Debbie. She was also, it was kind of a meeting of three minds on that, and John Cutler, I think, edited it. But yeah, Wolf James did an excellent job of it. Yeah.
So selfishly, I have to ask you, because there's a song called Francesca on the album.
Right.
I'm a Francesca.
Okay.
I know I introduced myself as Fran, which I go by here, but I am a Francesca.
She was bragging last night.
I was, which at first glance you're like, ooh. There's not a lot of songs with my name, and I was like, oh my God, I'm excited to listen to this one.
Okay.
And then I was like, it's not really the happiest.
No, it's not. No, it's really not.
So,
sorry.
what was kind of the meaning behind that one, and where did the name come into play?
Yeah, you're probably like listening to it, waiting for the name to come up.
Yeah, right. I'm like, I haven't. It seems to not have said it one time.
So it's kind of that song nods to that's one of the more direct references to the poem.
Yeah.
In Canto 5, the character Dante arrives to this like enormous place in hell where there's this giant hurricane, and it's where lovers are being punished for having fallen in love, in a way, in his fundamentalist like Dark Age. It wasn't the Dark Age, it was kind of Renaissance time, but like his fundamentalist thinking that they fell in love, but that's also a sin. There's some carnal sin of lust, and they're being punished for having been swept off their feet. They're being tossed off. Sorry, excuse me. That's. I'm glad that maybe that doesn't translate to the US. They're being tossed around. They're being tossed around. That would have been a very interesting scene in the poem. So they're being tossed off in hell. They're being tossed around in hell in this hurricane. Jesus Christ. The song sort of wanted to capture some of that feeling, but also undermine and sort of reapproach or ameliorate their condition and say, well, no, this isn't a punishment. How could we be punished for having fallen in love? That, you know, they're in the poem, they're trapped, they're kind of locked arm in arm, they're still holding on to one another, and they're sort of weeping. Or Paolo is silent throughout that scene, and he's just weeping. That's her lover, Francesca de Rimini. And I think why it's significant is, like, Francesca de Rimini is not a fictional character. She was a real person from Florence that Dante knew about, and she was married in like a political marriage at the age of 13 or 14 to like a nobleman, to a much older, quite unwell man, and, you know, in what we would call now is like a child marriage, you know, and she ended up falling in love with somebody else. She fell in love with his younger brother, so somebody closer to her age. And when he found out about the affair, he murdered them both at once. And so he in his wisdom sort of goes, okay, yeah, like he writes that how sad it is that they're in hell, but at the same time he also made the decision to immortalize this person who was a real person into his book, and to populate hell with her, and sort of write that, yeah, she's been punished for that. So part of the approach is also, it's like, well, no, hang on a second, and maybe approach that idea with our own modern day sensibilities, and sort of soothe that scene a little bit, you know, and kind of turn those tears of sadness into tears of joy, and say, well, no, this is exactly where I want to be. This is exactly where I chose to be, and would make that decision again and again.
It made a lot more sense to me when we were preparing for the interview, because I had listened to it when it first was released on its own, and I was like, you know, I feel like maybe I'm missing something.
Right.
And once, you know, we're doing prep and hearing more, reading more about what really like was coming from this album, I was like, now it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Now
and the way you just explained
now
it.
I understand the connection.
That's
with
the reference.
But it's an awesome song. The song, it's a, you know, that has a major like rock element to it, I feel like. Totally, yeah. There's a good, what genre would you place this album in? Can you even do it? Or is it like I feel like genre's there's not, everything mixes now.
Yeah, I can't really place it. And I think part of the approach, I wanted to make sure that also my influences are super eclectic. And so being honest to my influences, it feels dishonest to my influence and how I experience music if I'm not somehow channeling the full spectrum of my own influences, and so genre to me seems convenient when we're talking or we're trying to box music into something. It seems convenient when we're marketing music and we're creating this idea that something is a neat little experience or a neat type of lifestyle. In a world where nothing exists in a vacuum. We live in a increasingly blended global world. So part of that is that, and part of it is also just allowing each song, and I think taking license from this idea of different circles and saying, okay, that was that circle, now this is this circle. Allowing each song to just fulfill itself in whatever production felt right at the time, and whatever sonic landscape or soundscape, whatever textures and colours felt right for that song at the time of its making, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
The cover art is very cool.
Yeah.
Is it your own mouth?
It is my own mouth. Those are my horsey teeth. So it's a wonderful photographer called Julia Johnson, who's based in LA, and she took that photo, that cover shot, and there's photographs throughout the in the inner sleeve and stuff like that. I just sent her a few doodles of like, this would be cool, you know. What if you bury me in soil? I just sent her like a little sketch of a mouth, in the ground, and she and her partner, who is part of her team, built this sort of set that they could bury me and
so you actually did do like go under and everything?
Yeah, we went under. Yeah,
it looks very cool.
It is really cool.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, it was. She was then kind of standing over me, keeping worms away from my mouth and stuff like that. But it was like,
lovely.
she just
but you got some dirt in there.
I got some. Oh yeah, yeah. I did.
Make it as realistic as possible.
Yeah.
Well, The last thing I want to ask you is just what are some other artists that you're listening to right now? I always think it's interesting to hear musicians' taste in what they're currently loving that's out there.
Yeah, I keep going back to stuff that returns to me and then like gives me a new thing. You know, I was testing out new headphones recently, and then something I always used to listen to on different systems, but was Nina Simone, the song "Wild as the Wind." So like I'm always going back to like classic like 20th century recordings.
Yeah.
Recently, I went back to, what was the last thing I was like really sat with an album? It was like Big Thief, you know, and Big Thief's first album and second album. Adrian Lenker, I think, is the primary writer of that work. And it was like, I don't know, it was just like such a stunning experience of like returning, being a tourist in my own memories, you know, and just this, I was just so taken with her songwriting and their songwriting. Those first two albums were the last kind of ones I really sat with in the way that we say it's hard to sit with an album, you know, to sit down with. And then, you know, obviously, you know, I was listening to Boy Genius recently. I'm touring soon with Madison Cunningham. I've been listening to Madison Cunningham. She's an incredible artist. I don't know.
Boy Genius is cool. Their Phoebe Bridgers is so cool.
No, absolutely, and just incredible songs. Just the craft in her songwriting is really impressive.
Thank you so much for sitting in here with us. This has been amazing. I will say, you know, a majority of us in the room have all listened to the album and
only
loved
a majority?
it.
Only a majority?
Yeah, really.
Jesus
like,
fucking Christ, guys.
I know. A majority.
Well,
I mean, almost everyone. I only say a majority because I think maybe a couple didn't have access to it.
I'm kidding.
Oh yeah.
I'm looking forward to hearing it myself.
We like to, toot our own horn when we get things in advance, right? We're like, well, we've heard it all already.
Thank you for listening to it.
And it's really, really great. They all loved it as well.
Got some big fans in the room. Yeah,
really, very exciting. And honestly, it's one of those things where I would say, hey, if you're in a city that has tickets still, you can go check them out. But a lot of the spots are sold out, which is crazy. US and some dates in the UK and Europe later in the year.
Yeah, I think we've tickets. It's no good for people who are, this side of the world, but we've tickets for maybe a few European shows that were announced.
Right. It's like, hey, if you're like us, you're in New York, it's sold out. So you can walk by, see the big sign on the outside Madison Square Garden, and everyone can listen to Unreal Unearthed.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. But we'll be back next year, I think. But thank you so much for...
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in.